Yo, we just people from the north side. Once and Timmy's at the shore fine. Winter ready on the four ties. Heavy traffic during 4-5. Gotta hustle on your own time. Color people every port side. We just people from the north side.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's your host, your boy George Mackay, back again, and I got a returning guest. Someone I haven't had a chance to talk to for a little bit, but now he's free, he's wide open, and he's available to talk to me. I'm so excited. Please help me welcome back to Straight Talk Wrestling, my good friend, and that's not shop talk, that's legit, Josh Alexander. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I can't complain, dude. I have been looking forward to this all week. We got this kind of locked up about a week and a half ago. I was counting down the minutes at work today. I'm like, oh, it's 3:54, man. I got to get home. I got to check my equipment. I got to make coffee. I got to make sure everything's on point.
I'm glad you're well caffeinated for this one. I'll try to get ready for all the questions that are going to come my way.
Absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, guys, there's going to be some questions Josh just may not have answers to, or questions that Josh can't comment on, and that's okay. But I'm going to try to ask everything that I possibly can, and we're going to have a great conversation like we always do. First question, ding ding, round one. Uh, we're almost coming up on the year mark of Scott D'Amore no longer being part of TNA. And I know last year that was difficult for a lot of the roster. It kind of took the whole wrestling world by surprise. I know you've been asked this 1,000 times, but some of my fans may have not watched the other interviews or stuff you've been in. What was that whole process like for you when you guys all found out the news that Scott was no longer going to be a part of TNA?
Uh, it was like a double-edged sword, man. Like on one end, like I'm an adult. I understand this is a business. I understand that, this company is owned by, lots of very powerful people that have, a say in which way this company goes. This company being Impact TNA at the time, just recently rebranded TNA. And, I'm not privy to board meetings. I'm not privy to any of that stuff that's going on behind the scenes with, Scott D'Amore being the acting president of TNA and the higher ups and what disagreements they may or may not have and which direction they want to go. So, you keep a clear head with that. It is difficult, but, it is a reality of business. So, but like, I will speak to the difficult part. Like for me, I spent 5 years in TNA Impact Wrestling up to that point, under, the presidency of Scott D'Amore. And, you know, I developed a relationship with him in the past, the last 2 years, kind of before he was let go. So probably year 3 to 5 for me. And that was because, I was kind of a main event player. I was somebody that was figured into things. So, you get conversations with the president of the company, with somebody that's the head of creative more and more when you have more and more responsibility thrust upon you. And we developed a relationship. The one thing I can say is we developed a trust. Like I trusted him in the process of everything that he was doing. And he showed me that tenfold with, whatever plan he had from when I defeated Christian Cage at Bound for Glory and had no idea I was going to, ever win back that Impact World Championship at the time. But he had a plan in place that entire time. And I just trusted the process and, it all came through to what it was. And then after that, when I finally regained the championship and I went on to have the longest reign in company history, I feel like he developed a trust in me to where, he could trust that I was always going to go out there. I was always going to deliver. I was always going to kill myself for, the company, for the roster, for the fans, for myself, this foolish pride that I have to go out there every single time and try to give everything I have. And I know you've seen it, on the independents, even, through Destiny over the years and other independents throughout Ontario. I'm just wired in this way where, I want to go out and I want to give the best I can for myself and for the fans to make sure they feel like they get their money's worth every single time. Because otherwise, what am I doing? I want to call myself a professional wrestler. I'm going to go out and do it to the best of my ability every time. So, it was a shock to me because I felt like we were, rebranding in TNA. It felt like we were on this hot streak. Crowds were increasing. And it just felt like we were finally gaining traction after this slow burn and build of regaining fans' trust for, the prior 4 or 5 years that I was in that company, because TNA kind of came from the dark ages in those mid 2010s, like you're talking 2015 through 2018. Many people have said it many times. TNA was on its deathbed, or has been on its deathbed a dozen times, if not more. And it is just this company that keeps going. And I think the reason it keeps going is because there's just so many passionate people involved in that company that want to keep it going and give their all. And I'm talking about like everybody in the roster, just to name a few. Like you have someone like Eddie Edwards who's been there more than a decade. That man's like killed himself every single time to go out there and represent the company, represent the locker room as a leader, and give everything he has. And I saw that same kind of passion in somebody like Scott D'Amore. Like TNA Impact meant something to him, meant something far greater than a paycheck, meant something far greater than a job. And if you want proof of that, just watch me and Will Ospreay from the very first main event of the very first episode of TNA Impact from earlier in 2024. And that promo that he cut in the ring was impromptu because we went home 3 minutes early. And he just went out there and off the cuff spoke from the heart. And man, it gave me goosebumps and there was tears welled up in his eyes because this company meant so much to him. So, for, a couple of weeks after that promo and all that stuff for this to just happen, it came as a shock, certainly. But, like I said, it's just the cost of doing business.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But again, Scott D'Amore, you can't keep a man like that down. And he goes, what does he go and do, Josh? He goes and resurrects Maple Leaf Pro. He brings it literally from obscurity, much like TNA on its deathbed. Maple Leaf Pro was literally 6 feet under. And he goes and says, you know what? I want a new challenge. My new challenge is this. I'm gonna bring you gotta love it. And then of course you guys show up. It was two nights of absolute banger after banger after banger. There's not a bad match on those 2 nights. And maybe that's me just being a Canadian wrestling fan from the heyday, but there was not a bad match. And it reminded me so much of that intimate feel that Maple Leaf Pro was known for. It reminded me of just how great the glory days were. What was it like for you to be on the inaugural return of Maple Leaf Pro and how special that was? I mean, being a Canadian wrestling fan like you, knowing your history like you do, you must have had some tears in your eyes.
Well, okay, I can't get this twisted off the bat. I did not grow up watching Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling. It was well after my time when I got into the business. I got into this business as like a real fan, a diehard fan. You're talking like 1997. So I was like the birth of the Attitude Era, Stone Cold Steve Austin, all these guys, ride or die, right? But as I got into the business in 2005 and I started, I would cross paths with people around the Ontario Independents that had come up in the territory system. They'd come up wrestling for Maple Leaf Pro. And, you go back in history through the internet and through tape trading at the time, and you'd watch this territorial phenom that was, other than maybe Stampede Wrestling, was the it spot for Canadian wrestling. And I remember, it was probably 2-3 years ago, Scott D'Amore just in passing had said he owned the Maple Leaf Wrestling library from back in the day. And I was like, oh, that's got to be worth something. Like, that's incredible. Through whichever way, like I'll let him say it in an interview one day. I don't know. I'll butcher it and get it wrong. But he acquired it somehow. And because it meant something to him. And, when, he got knocked out of TNA and, things happen as they do. I feel like, he had unfinished business. I feel like this wrestling bug, that passion that he had for TNA is just a passion for pro wrestling in general. Like he doesn't have to do pro wrestling. He does pro wrestling because he loves it. And I think Maple Leaf Wrestling is the perfect kind of platform to do that because, you can talk about how much you love pro wrestling and stuff like that, but as Canadian wrestlers, we take a certain amount of pride in, the wrestling that happens in this country, the wrestlers that come from this country, because we know how difficult it is to get noticed first and foremost. And I see Maple Leaf Wrestling as, a way for him to, scratch that wrestling itch and show what he can do because there's so much, on his mind and there's such a passion for it, like I've said many times. But it's also, for me, it's a platform for Canadian wrestlers to get noticed on a global stage, unlike anything I've seen in my entire 20 years in professional wrestling.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? You're right. Listen, I'm not saying I'm old. Okay, I grew up in the. I know a little bit about tape trading and stuff like that, but I learned about Maple Leaf Pro from my grandfather and my dad, who were absolutely addicted to professional wrestling. So that's where it's ingrained in me, and now it's ingrained in my children, and it's going to be ingrained in my children's children because they're not going to have a say. They're not going to have a say. There's no option. It's going to keep going. The love for pro wrestling in the Mackay household, anyways. Now I have to ask about Will Ospreay, man. Those matches were phenomenal. They are literally probably hands down going to be cemented as up there in conversation with some of the greatest matches of all time. You two, as you always do, you go out, you leave everything out there. There's not, and you're right. I've seen it millions of times. I've seen you leave everything out there and more. I've seen you leave stuff that shouldn't be out of you out there and more. I.e., Destiny Steel Cage blood match. Go watch that, guys. There's a lot of blood that came out that day. But man, Will Ospreay, you two of the best wrestlers in the world, going toe to toe, dream match field, dream match hype, and you guys don't deliver. You go above and beyond. Talk to me about working with Will Ospreay those two matches.
I mean, you can say everything about Will Ospreay, but it's already been said so many times. I think anybody that's seen him wrestle like just once knows how naturally gifted and how insanely talented he is at pro wrestling. Not just from a physical standpoint. I'm talking from a mental capacity of being able to, put together a match that is going to entertain the fans. Like Will Ospreay has a formula down to give the fans what they want, and that's why they're coming out of their seats every single Wednesday night on Dynamite or every single main event in Japan. Like all around the world, this guy has shown he has what it takes to be a top professional wrestler against any opponent. And for me, stepping foot in the ring with him, I felt like I was representing TNA. I felt like there was a load on my shoulders, a certain amount of pressure to go out there and deliver with somebody who has been regarded as the best for a very long time and show that, as me being the representative from the locker room, that, this locker room can hang with the very best. And I was honored and privileged to be, the one that represented our company in that, position. Speedball Mike Bailey also got to do it as well at Bound for Glory under the biggest stage. And I'm sure he felt, very similar. But, all that pressure, it's just something that, it's something I enjoy. It's something that makes me push myself and, see if I can rise to the occasion kind of thing. It's this thing that after 20 years in pro wrestling that, makes me want it even more. And to be put in those situations is something I feel incredibly privileged, to have first and foremost. But, you never know what the chemistry is going to be like. I've wrestled tons of guys that are regarded as the best that I've watched, and I'm just like, man, that guy's amazing. And then when we get in there, the chemistry isn't quite there. The match is still great, but it can never get to that extra level that really makes it something special, memorable, that's going to make it last through time and be legendary, or however you want to talk about it. And from the moment me and Will kind of sat down and started talking, Will had talked about his passion for TNA. I mean, he said it in interviews many times. He wouldn't be a wrestler if it weren't for AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and Christopher Daniels, that unbreakable three-way in 2005. And me, I echoed the same sentiments. Like these matches were the ones that inspired me to be a pro wrestler in the first place. So we had that in common. And he just came in wanting to give everything he had to try to make, myself and make the company, get as many eyes on it as possible. Because, I don't think he felt like he owed TNA, but there's a certain part of him that wouldn't be around if it weren't for TNA. So it's something he took a lot of pride in. So we're both in there just, prideful professional wrestlers, been doing this for a long time, trying to give everything they have. And, thankfully, everything came together. That chemistry was there, and we made magic happen. And now, with me closing out my time in TNA, and you never say never. I could be back in TNA one day, and TNA will live forever in my heart. But if it is all said and done with Josh Alexander and TNA, I can only hope that those matches are remembered. Maybe not in the same light because I put that unbreakable three-way on such a pedestal, but remembered through time by many, many fans for decades to come, and something that is looked upon as like a very bright spot in the TNA era of this resurgence.
Absolutely. I think they will be. I think that they will stand the test of time. I think they will become lore in the TNA history books. And that's just my opinion. But the great thing about my opinion is this is my show. So my opinion does matter. It's highly regarded here.
I'll take it.
That's right. Yes. So I got to ask this free agency, it's looming, it's out there. You know, this question was coming. I'm not asking where, but I'm asking have conversations been had and how are the conversations going? I mean, I can't ask you to speculate on where you're going because that's your decision with your family's decision. I'm not asking for any breaking news. I'm just asking because I wouldn't be a wrestling podcaster if I didn't throw that question out there.
I mean, you got a job to do too. I totally get it. I have, secured agents to handle all this for me. I'm very privileged to have, some of the best agents in pro wrestling representing me through these conversations because, it's something that is completely foreign to me. I signed my first contract, sight unseen almost to join TNA. I re-upped for 3 more years on like I signed a contract, but it was basically just a handshake deal between myself and Scott, and that's where that trust that I talked about earlier came into play. But now, going to free agency, dealing with different companies, bigger companies, all these other things. I'm just lucky to have these people representing me, and they don't tell me much. They treat this very much like professional sports. There's no tampering. There's none of this stuff going on. They don't want to tell me figures, numbers, all this other stuff, and it has been driving me crazy. And I've had friends, family, people asking me all these questions, and all I can tell you is that I'm going to be okay because that's what I've been told. And I've been told there have been conversations and there's options on the table, and I will have some pretty serious decisions to make come, midnight on February 15th. So I'm very excited. I'm very nervous, but like I said, earlier, this journey is something that I'm very privileged to be on. I'm very lucky because the opportunities I was given in TNA, and I will never, speak badly about TNA because I would not be in this position if it were not for the platform I was given and the opportunity I was given 6 years ago to join TNA wrestling. And now, it's been 6 years looking at the landscape of TNA. Could I go back? Yes. I have said it many times. That is not off the table. I have left it in their hands to, come to me with an offer. And if they do, I'll be very happy to entertain that. But, it's just all about what I want to do next, what's best for my family, like you said. And, what excites me. That's the thing I'm really looking forward to. And it's not just like dream matchups, working with certain people and stuff like that. It's just that I've really gotten into telling stories, man. Television wrestling is completely different than the independents. I've been very privileged in TNA, to tell amazing stories with like me and Moose on the chase for the championship. Myself and Bully Ray was one of the favorite stories I got to tell in my entire career. I just finished out with TNA telling, it was a quick story, but I feel it was a very well executed story with somebody I think who is the future of TNA and Mike Santana, with our I Quit match. And I just want to tell more stories, man. I want to be able to do that because I feel like I've gotten pretty good at it, and I feel like it's something that's going to really excite me moving forward. So, come February 15th, we're all going to find out together, and I'm very excited for it.
Absolutely. I can't wait. It's going to be like Christmas for me. I mean, think about it. Valentine's Day, I get to spend time with the woman I love. And then the day after, I get to find out what one of my favorite wrestlers is going to do. So it's kind of like a great weekend if you're really bitching.
Well, hopefully I have answers for people on February 15th, or at least I have answers for myself. So
Absolutely. Don't worry. There'll be a text, and all the text will read for me is, so where are we going? But regardless of the fact, man, I know that you are going to be a great addition to wherever you go. And, looking at how crazy wrestling is right now, we talked about the Forbidden Door when New Japan and AEW started working together. We talked about the Forbidden Door when AEW and TNA started working together. And then we talked about all these things. Tony Khan goes and buys ROH, and all of a sudden he revives that. Impact goes back to being TNA, which was insane. I still love that vignette. All of you guys, I was born for this. I'm ready for this. I knew about. I was like, oh my god, this is so electric. That vignette still gives me fucking goosebumps, man. Still gives me goosebumps. But I look at the partnership with WWE and TNA, and that's happening right now. And I look at TNA getting live to air, not pre-taped, live airtime on Sportsnet. crazy time period. And I'm thinking this is where TNA was meant to be. And I'm looking at the people who have come home, like a Santana. I look at people that have come home, like a Tessa Blanchard. I look at people that have come back, and TNA is a place where I believe second chances are second nature. And I believe that a lot of people in pro wrestling, when they feel like they don't have much to tell or much left to give, TNA finds a way to reignite that passion, reignite that fire. Would I be wrong in saying that, or what do you think?
I mean, I've always called TNA the land of opportunity. If you look at the past, 20 plus years of its existence, it has been a place for, young, lesser known wrestlers to be discovered. You're talking about AJ Styles, just to name one, but the number one that was discovered in TNA and is the first person you think about when you think about those three letters. And, myself included, nobody knew who I was on a global stage until I showed up in TNA, and look at me now. But it's also a place where people can come reinvent themselves. You look at someone like Christian Cage, not seen as a main eventer in WWE at the time, couldn't break through whatever, fictional glass ceiling was there for whatever reason, came to TNA, became a world champion, showed he was a main event caliber player, went back to WWE and showed he was a world champion. You know what I mean? It is a place for you to be discovered and is a place for you to reinvent yourself, and it is to this day. And that's something that I take a lot of pride in for TNA, because it makes the best out of everybody that comes in there if you want to.
Let's talk about Northern Armory. I want to talk about that. I love the fact that you got your own faction, albeit how short it ever was. I love the fact that you were able to groom Icarus, you're able to groom Williams, you're able to kind of give them that like learning tree branch. How much fun was that storyline? I mean, obviously the way it ended, the beat down in the ring, not the best thing, of course, but we don't focus on the ending. Let's focus on everything but the ending. We'll leave the ending out of it. But what was it like, being able to kind of work with those guys, kind of be the groomsman, if you will, grooming them, getting them ready for how much pressure TNA really is?
Well, like for me, when I came into TNA, I had Ethan Page, who had already been here for about a year at the time, to help kind of be the buffer to, lead me through whatever trials and tribulations were to come with it, working on TV, the timing of certain things and all these other things, just stuff that's different from independent wrestling. And I've been able to get my word in with management on a few people. I've put over so many people over the past 3 or 4 years to get contracts in this company, and a lot of them didn't. But Judas and Travis were one that I've been championing for a long time, and luckily, like it crept in. When the Motor City Machine Guns were slated to leave, I was posed the question of who can replace the Motor City Machine Guns, and the simple answer is nobody. Like that's like, how do you replace the most iconic tag team in TNA history, one of the most influential tag teams in all of pro wrestling history? You can't. But Judas and Travis are supremely talented, and they've shown it on the independents in places like Defy Prestige and so on and so forth over the years. And I just knew there was something there. And above and beyond all that, they're really good kids. Like, they have good heads on their shoulders. They're professional. They're passionate about pro wrestling, which is everything I love and I want to see. So I had no problem sticking my neck out to try to get them in here. And then when I got them in, it was like, a couple of tag matches on Explosion, and then you wouldn't see them for a couple of loops. And I was like, what are we doing, guys? Like, these guys, if you just give them reps, like, I understand the first match is not going to be a home run. Like, they have to get their feet wet. They have to figure out what they're doing. Like, this is a completely different animal. And just at the time in TNA with the roster structure and everything like that, with people coming and going and like storylines and stuff, there just wasn't space for them to be, given these opportunities early on when they first signed. So I kind of pushed when they turned me heel. I was like, can you put these kids with me? I'll be able to kind of take them under my wing. I'll help them whichever way I can. And, I got to do that. Yes. But I would have loved to have been able to do more. If you look at the whole run we've had, I had them by my side for everything, but, for TVs almost, but not pay-per-views. They were constantly banned from ringside while I was on pay-per-view, because I'm like, Santino must hate me because he never banned, the system from ringside at any of these pay-per-views. Like, Moose had everybody at his disposal at all times, or Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers had everybody at their disposal. And all of a sudden Josh is left high and dry on his own, to face Steve Macklin and Mike Santana and all these other people. but like I just feel like there was more meat on the bone there. I felt like we could have interacted with more promo stuff, to help them with that stuff, and we didn't get to do that much. But I'm very happy that we did get to work together. I'm very happy because I like them so much. I think so highly of them. I think they have a very bright future in that company. They just need to get tag matches. They've had maybe 2 or 3 tag matches in their whole run so far, and I hope now with the new Northern Armory coming in, with Eric Young turning on me and taking over this group, that gives them legs to keep traveling forward. And I really hope that they get opportunities with, like, the Hardys or the Good Hands and all these other tag teams that we have established, because you're going to see something very special from them the moment they get those opportunities. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, I sat down with Judas a couple weeks ago actually, and I asked him point blank. I was like, what would it be like to have a ladder match with the Hardys?" And he's like, "Bro, that's the dream. That's the dream." And you know what? It's a super obtainable dream if the opportunities and the stars align. But you're right; those two are so gifted. And I told Judas, like, I mean, when you and I sat down at the CNE, I sat down with him a few weeks later. I was like, "Did you know Josh Alexander put you over last time him and I had a conversation?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm humbled. I don't know why he keeps putting me over." I'm like, "Because you're good, man. You're good. He puts you over because you're talented. That's it."
Yeah, because his like 70th match is one of my favorite singles matches of all time. Like, it's that kind of talent doesn't sure, you can talk about work ethic and all this other stuff, but there's a certain aptitude that you have to be born with. And he's just born with something different that prepared him for that moment, whether it's, not buckling under pressure or just knowing exactly what to do and when, and having this ability to be years ahead of where I was at that time in my career. It's just impressive.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And you mentioned him earlier, and I got to ask this. I mean, I know you've been asked this question before, but when Ethan Page won the NXT title, I tweeted, okay? It was a tweet that didn't go over well because I tweeted I wanted it so bad to happen. I'm like, this is perfect. TNA is sharing talent. Josh Alexander is there. Why won't they do Josh versus Ethan? That would have been so amazing. There's meat on that bone too. Was it ever discussed? Was it ever thrown around? Like, I know people throw around theories all the time, but was there ever an approach? Like, did were you ever one of the people that was going to go over when they were sharing the talent, or was it only those few select individuals that got a chance to appear?
This is the tough question. I will say that there was one certain situation where I was supposed to go that did not happen, and there was maybe 2 other situations where I was asked to go and it got shut down for whatever which reason that wasn't my own doing. So, no hard feelings on my end. Like I said, I apparently have options on the table, so there's no hard feelings, nothing like that. But yeah, there was definitely plenty of stories that could have been told, whether the North reunited for one night only, or I went one on one with Ethan Page in some capacity, just because of all the history we have together. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff thrown at me at certain times, and whether it's true, false, or whatever, it just didn't materialize for whatever reason. Timing wasn't there for it. So.
Yeah, I love that. I love the answer, but I hate that line. Timing wasn't there. Timing sucks. When is timing ever going to be right, man?
Well, I say it all the time, and I didn't believe this earlier on in my career, but as I got older and I've been through some trials and tribulations, I believe everything happens for a reason. So we'll just leave it at that.
I like that. I like that. Now, you're one of your last indie dates, or I believe your last indie date to take indie bookings was here in Ontario. It was Barry Wrestling. It was a special moment, a really amazing picture. Shout out to Brian Weiss, one of the great photographers here in Ontario. Next to, of course, Jeffrey Coleshoe of the Indies, who is your one of your close friends as well. Also runs a great promotion, Northern Crown, which is phenomenal. But there's a shot that Brian Weiss took of your headgear, just in the Barry ring, and we could see you kind of out of focus, off in the distance. And it's a special moment. It's a somber moment, and it's a sad moment, man, because those intimate venues that we got to see you at were some of the best matches I've ever seen in my life. And dude, from the bottom of my heart, for being an Ontario indie wrestling fan, for being a pro wrestling fan, thank you. Thank you for the utmost amount of years that you put your body on the line to entertain this little chubby kid from Brampton, Ontario, because I had a blast watching your career. I still have your picture. It's hanging right here. The one I made you sign to my favorite podcaster. It's a lie, but it's okay. I know it deep down in my heart.
Hey, man, I'm on this show right now, and I'm not doing many others, so I'll give you that.
Yeah, there you go. But was the choice Barry, or is that just again timing? Was that just timing, or was Barry the last one you really just wanted to honor?
So I had discussed this with my wife, and my agents and stuff like that going into free agency, and they were like, maybe you should tone back the indie bookings to be completely healthy come February 15th and all this other stuff. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I've just done the indies forever. This is what I do. And as I talked to my wife and stuff like that, we kind of make the decision that, it might not be a bad idea, but we never come to a decision. Then it was early November. I wrestle what would be my last match in the GTA for Northern Crown. And the GTA has kind of been the the apex of my independent wrestling career for 20 years. I made my name in Hamilton, Toronto, all these areas around here. And I saw it Northern Crown kind of as what would be my finale, in a sense that I get to pass off everything I have to what I see as the next generation of Ontario indie wrestling. I see Gabriel Fuerza and Von Vertigo as, the two best wrestlers, the two that can kind of take the leadership role that I had. Because for whatever reason, for the past, probably 15 years, people have looked to me as a leader in Ontario from a wrestling capacity in locker rooms and stuff like that. And I said it in the post match promo with them that, I never asked to be a leader. This is never like an application I filled out. I never wanted it. It was just seemed to materialize organically because I always led by example. I went out there every single night. I killed myself. I did everything I could to put on the best show possible. And like I said earlier, I don't like bullshit. So if there was ever bullshit in a locker room, I'd be the first one to shut it down, tell people to grow up, get out, or, whatever. And, when I was on a show, there was never any BS. It was just the way it is. And people just went out and tried to wrestle their hardest. And, I set kind of the bar for, the show that I was on. And I think that's why I fell into that role. And I looked around the ring that night after I put over Gabriel Fuerza a few months earlier. We did this kind of story in Northern Crown where I turned heel and took a championship, even though I wasn't the champion. But then we had a three-way match and I put over Von Vertigo. So I ended up putting them both over in Ontario. And those were the two only pins I'd eaten in Ontario in probably like 5 years or something like that up into that point, which I didn't even realize until somebody else pointed it out to me. But it was just really me trying to pass off everything I had to them so they can go on and be as successful as possible and take this as seriously as possible. Because I think Ontario is some of the best wrestlers in the world. And I just think, the locker rooms need somebody that's going to be able to stick up for the other wrestlers that might not have a voice. So I did that. But when I grabbed the microphone afterwards, I didn't want to do any of this. It's just in the moment, I remember Von Vertigo pinned me and I started like tearing up because the reception, the match went as well as it could have possibly gone. I was so proud of that moment. And I just, I talked about it with my wife, but we hadn't made a decision. I was just like, I'm done with the indies. I just said it. And it was from, how emotional I was going on there. And I was just like, I said it, I'm going to stick to it. And I only had a certain amount of bookings left. I think January 11th was supposed to be my last one for overall in prestige, but I wasn't able to make it due to visa issues. But Barrie Wrestling, early December was my last one in Ontario, a couple hours north of that Northern Crown show. And Barrie Wrestling's been very kind to me over the years, man. I lived in Tottenham for a few years, which was only like 45 minutes from Barrie. I'd wrestled there probably 25 times over the years. Did an Ironman match there. Did a bunch of stuff there, and I just love Sean. I love the crew there. They treat everybody very well. They put on the best show they possibly can every single time for the fans. So closing out my independent wrestling in Canada at Barrie, I was totally cool with it, totally fine with it. And that image that you're talking about that Brian took is just when I leave the headgear of the ring, I did it as well at TNA this past week when I had my final match, and I did, I was able to talk to the fans, the live crowd afterwards, not on TV. I left my headgear in the ring. That's just a way of me to say that there's going to be a part of me here forever, and I'm taking a part of you with me forever. And that's just the kind of way I want to, symbolize that moment. So.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of the greatest. It's a simple gesture that goes a long way. I saw that picture. I was scrolling on my phone because I wasn't able to make it out to the show because, stupid car issues, right? But I saw that photo and I was like, yeah, I welled up. I was like, yeah, it's time. I get it. I get it, man. I get what he's doing. It's time. It's hard, but it's time. I get it. And it sucks because I want it, like I want to keep Ontario a secret. I don't want people to know how great it is here, but also at the same time, what kind of podcast would I be if I didn't highlight the great talent that we have in my backyard? And you're right, Gabriel Fuerza. I mean, he fights all the time, but him and I are pretty tight. We're like almost best friends, but he doesn't really acknowledge it at all. Von Vertigo as well is an amazing talent. And you know what? The talent pool in Barrie is second to none. The talent pool in Ontario is second to none. And I even look at the crop that's coming up after Gabriel Fuerza and Von Vertigo, who are the vets now. I look at the talent that's coming up, and the future is very bright. Ontario's always had a long lineage, a long great history of pro wrestlers, and it will continue for sure. It will absolutely continue. And another thing that sucks, I won't see my favorite member of the Alexander family. I won't see Jet anymore. Jet's awesome. Jet's
I
giving me
mean,
Jet's giving me a couple of chops, man. He's awesome.
give him 10 years. I'm sure he'll start training eventually. So,
I know he will. I know he absolutely will. Still, one of my greatest videos ever is that the one of your wife posted when Jet kicked you right in the sack, dropped you like a sack of potatoes. It's amazing.
yeah, every year in November, that thing comes up in the memories and is thrust around all over again. So,
It's great too because my birth month, so I'm like, oh sweet, this is how I start November. Josh Alexander getting kicked in the nuts. You talked about Iron Man matches, and you are definitely no stranger to Iron Man matches. And I actually had TJP on the show last week, and we talked about that COVID Iron Man match between you and him. And I told him, I said, I don't know if you realize that match has a serious like cult following. That match is aged well, and it's one of those bangers, man, that a lot of people really touch on and how special it was, the story that was told. And you mentioned it again about telling stories. That match was probably one of the best stories I'd seen in TNA at that time, was that Iron Man match. And he was humbled by my words, but it's the truth. That match is special. And did you know that it had as much of a following as it does? Like, it's one of those matches that a lot of people are like, if I'm having wrestling conversations, oh, it was one of your favorite matches of this decade. TJP, Josh Alexander, Iron Man match. Let's go all day.
I mean, I definitely don't know it has a cult following whatsoever. I feel like it kind of fell by the wayside because of the lack of crowd, reception and everything else, because there was no live crowd. Like, we wrestled each other for 66 minutes or something in front of nobody, which, to me as a wrestler, I think wrestlers understand this more so than, broader wrestling fans, that it is so much more difficult to do it without fans. But, I just, it's special to me. It will forever be special to me. Like, I will forever thank TJP for that match, for going in there. And, after everything he's done in his career, he did not have to go out there and work as hard as he did. And, I was just very lucky to work with TJP in any capacity in the several matches we had, but to do it in that Iron Man match, it's special to me. But I'm very happy to hear it as a cult following. We didn't kill, each other for absolutely no reason. So.
It does. It does. It's one of those matches that when I do talk to people about it, they're like, yeah, man, I got to go back and rewatch that match. If it doesn't have a cult following, I sell them on it. So in some essence, I have created the cult following, Josh, of this match.
I mean, somebody told me that it has like 750,000 views on YouTube, which I don't know how much of that match you have to watch to count as a view. I'd hope it'd be, nearly half of it, but that's pretty insane to me.
I'll own up to like a good 1,500 views. Dude, I've watched that match so often. It's one of those matches that I can go back. For me, it ranks up as honestly and truly just some of my favorite matches. I'm an Owen Hart guy, as you know. We've talked about this. I love Owen Hart. Owen Brett, WrestleMania 10. I can watch that match every day of the week. When I'm under the weather, when I'm sick, I throw that match on because I know every move. I can even recite the commentary. That's how many times I've watched that match. And then same thing. Like, I've watched you versus TJP so many times that it really is special. And the great thing about it is one of those matches that over time it will age with grace, because every time I watch it in those 66 minutes, I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even catch that the first 1,000 times I watched it. But that's something, you always find something new. And that's the great avenue that you two did with that story that you guys told. There's always something to watch. There's always something to catch. There's always something you can go back and be like, oh shit, I didn't see that the first time, or maybe I forgot about that. That's what's special.
Well, all credit goes to TJB for that one, because he was definitely, guiding me along for that one and really showing me the ropes at that time in my career. So,
Nice. Again, I love the humbleness, man. I love you're a class act all the way around. And I can't a couple more questions. I'm gonna let you go enjoy the rest of your evening. But I gotta talk Mike Santana. I gotta talk the I Quit match. I gotta talk you literally passing the torch. You were the face of TNA for a very long time. You were the heart and soul of TNA for a very long time in certain capacities. There's been a lot of heart and souls, but you were definitely one of the arteries for sure. And then we pass it to Mike Santana. I Quit. You are now, the face, the franchise of TNA. How special is that to be in a moment where you can carry over that evolution with another wrestler who has the same passion that you do for this business?
oh, super special. And it's even more special because that was not scripted whatsoever. That was all my own doing and all my 100% beliefs that I just put out there live on pay per view for the world to hear. And if you don't agree with me, too bad, because it's out there now and I said it. So if it meant anything to you that I was regarded as the standard, for me to say that he's the standard is because I 100% believe it. That none of that was storyline, none of that was scripted. He grabbed the microphone, asked me to shake his hand and all this stuff. I grabbed the microphone, said, "Yeah, man of my word. I quit tonight. I'll shake your hand." And I just said it because I believed it so strongly in that moment. It wasn't even like I thought about saying it. The words just came out of my mouth without effort. Because from the moment, like I have known Mike Santana for 10 years. And LAX in the North, we worked together a lot before he went off to AEW, and now he's returned to TNA and he's come back with this fire inside him that I'm very happy to see because I've always known he's capable of this. It was just he's spoken about it, like his addiction issues and all this stuff that he's overcome, and like can't be more proud and more happy for somebody turning their life around because this guy has wrestling is his addiction, and he had some other things competing for it for a while, I think, and now he's found this one outlet that is like the rightful outlet for him to get out there and be addicted to share with the world because he is so talented at this. He cares so much. And like, I can talk about how much I love this, how much I care for it and all this stuff all day long. And it would sound braggadocious, but for me to recognize it in somebody else, to the point that I feel that I have a passion for this, or even more so than I have a passion for this, and for me to recognize that in somebody like Mike Santana, that's where all the respect of the world goes to somebody like him. He has come in, and from his very first match at Rebellion last year, he came to the back afterwards. I gave him a big hug, and I was just like, you should be the champion. You should be you're the guy. Like you have solidified it. You're ready. Like it's not like you have to come in here and prove anything to anyone. You went out there and proved it in your very first match on your entrance alone. Like just that, it just bleeds out of him, that passion that he has for pro wrestling, and the fans get with it. They gravitate to it, and they see how hard he works. They see how much he loves this, and they get with him. Like being a babyface in professional wrestling is extremely difficult. I lived it for a very long time, and being a babyface champion is a million times more difficult because it's all up to the chase. And once you get the belt, how are you going to impress me now? And I was very lucky when I had the championship that I would go into most matches with a lukewarm reception because I was wrestling another babyface, or I was wrestling Eric Young in his hometown of Nashville or something like this. I was put in these situations, but by the end of the match, through my wrestling, I would get the crowd back on board with Josh. Josh is really good. Josh is the champion. We like Josh again. And it was this ebb and flow the entire time. But to see like Mike, he's such an organic baby face because it's just real. And like, I mean, he calls himself the realist and all this other stuff, but like it is completely genuine and real the entire time. And to be able to go out wrestling one of my best friends on that Genesis pay-per-view, putting him over, and like I got to put over my other best friend, Steve Macklin, on the way out at Turning Point as well. Like this is a storybook ending to me for my TNA career. Like if it all ends now, my career is over. Nobody signs me February 15th and I go back to construction. I am very proud of everything I've been able to do because I got to go in, I got to accomplish a lot. I got to show what I could do. I got, to share my love of pro wrestling with everybody around the world. And then I got to put over, two people that I think are immensely talented on my way out. And I got to anoint, people call me the Standard, the heart and soul a lot. And I don't think I ever really, took to it in the sense that I ever wanted to believe anybody, because, it's just, it's maybe the humbleness or something like that. But like, I need Mike to know that he is the Standard. He's the guy setting the bar for the rest of the card from here on out. And I think he's going to take it seriously. And I think, that entire roster's in for something, because that guy's going to show up every single night, whether it's pay-per-view or TV, and he's going to show the world.
Absolutely. And to hear that it wasn't scripted and that was from the heart, that makes that moment even more special, which is awesome. I'm sure Mike, you guys got backstage and Mike was like, damn, man, I'm in my feels right now. I can totally see him saying something like that.
Me and Mike, we might be kind of emotional behind closed doors, but
Fair enough. All right, my final question before I let you go enjoy the rest of your evening. You already said it, but I doubt it's going to happen. You're not going back to construction. You have options. Your agent has said to you, you have options. So February 15th, there will be options, and you will excel. Now, this is obviously going to drop after Royal Rumble, so no spoilers. Josh Alexander will not be at Royal Rumble. That's fine. I'm okay with it. But Jordynne Grace will, most likely. Do you have an opinion of which number she might enter?
There's 40 contestants now. So, if I were going to make somebody in one night, I would put them in number one, make them last till the final 2 or 3. That would be my hope for somebody, like Jordynne, who can go with the best in the world at any given time. She proved it last year already. If I was going to make her a superstar in one night, not that she already isn't one, but if you want to just make it, like, put her on the level of a Rhea Ripley or a Charlotte Flair or anybody else you want to put in that conversation, put her at one, have her run the whole gauntlet. She doesn't even have to win, but she'll come out of that looking like a star either way.
That's exactly what they did with AJ, and it worked. AJ came in at number 3, and he had one of the best Royal Rumble debuts ever. Royal Rumble is one of my favorite events, obviously next to WrestleMania, and of course, Bound for Glory and Slammiversary. I love those. Those are some of my favorite moments in wrestling. In my calendar year, I always look forward to those. And it's just, hopefully, one day you're back. But for right now, whatever the future holds, man, best of luck to you. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation, because I know you're not doing many. But as soon as February 15 hits, there's going to be a lot of media requests for Josh Alexander. I know this. I absolutely know this.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, I'm not doing a lot of these, and I've chosen to do 2 podcasts in this time that, I have off before I make my decision. That's just because, you guys are good people. Like the 2 I've chosen to do, and you've always been fair to me. You've always been kind, and I hope to see many hosts. There's probably not so many anymore sometime soon. So,
dude's gonna be 16 this year. 16.
Can't even think about that.
Yeah, and she's a stunner, just like mom. And I'm petrified for when dating happens. I'm not looking forward to it. But then, of course, that's when I get to call in favors. That's when I may have to be like, hey, Josh, listen, man, I know you're stateside, but just fly out for like an hour. I'll pay for the red eye. It's fine. No problem.
I'll send somebody far more intimidating than me. That's fine.
Nice. I want to reenact the 50 Cent sequence from Den of Thieves. That's my goal.
Yeah, I was just going to say the 50 cents. I'll send up some Tongan brothers from, a locker room somewhere.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Josh Alexander, thank you so much for joining me here on Straight Talk Wrestling today. Guys, you can follow him everywhere, Walking Weapon, on all social media platforms. February 15th, circle it on your calendars. The announcement will be made. That's it for me. I'm your host, your boy, George Mackay. All the socials are in the links below. Peace, love, and wrestling. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
We just people from the north side. Once the Timmy's hit the shore fine. Winter ready on the full ties. Heavy traffic during 4-5. Gotta hustle on your own time. Color people every port side. We just people from the north side.